So here we are in Union Square, the southeast corner, and that's where I'm hoping to interact with people about this issue of medical marijuana, of recreational marijuana, and of our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But there has to be a willpower and a willingness to unfold this spiritual dimension, to shun what's harming it, and to embrace what brings us closer to our soul, closer to what endures beyond social conditioning. I'm sure it was controversial on his time. Santa Claus. How many people really know the story of Santa Claus? I mean, we're told one thing. And even though you think it's a story, you think, oh, you know, Santa Claus, the opium of the masses, get poor kids to think they're actually going to get presents. It's a wonderful thing to believe in something that's beyond, you know, we have to sell out. Judges can only protect the rich. They can't really do due process and equal protection for the poor. But pay attention to how is the society functional. There's not much progress. We study our own body. A lot of people who are ill, one symptom of illness is there's no appetite. People lose interest on a psychological level. It can lead to depression. So when you study the effect of this cannabis plant on the body, you can see there's a reason that it's been in the pharmacopoeia of many ancient systems of medicine. And yet why in this part of the world, for the sake of consumerism and corporatism, do we seem to have so much confusion? Now, I mentioned earlier this book, Assault on Medical Freedom, by P.J. Lisa. There's no mention of marijuana in this book, but by looking at the book and understanding the chapters and how his formula for his research was to follow the money, we can begin to see what the dimension of the problem is when it comes to marijuana. Somebody said that because the United States government owns the patent on cannabis, which clearly shows that it has medicinal value, that in itself should overturn a lot of rulings about cannabis. But again, with constitutional rights, in these courts that we have that are privately held corporations with Dun and Bradstreet numbers, they've made an industry out of justice. You have to claim your rights. They're not going to do it for you. They're in it for the money. So they're not going to give away their trade secrets. So again, if you have any thoughts on this, come down and share it with us. We're at the southeast corner of Union Square, and that would be 14th Street, and I think that it's just called Union Square. Over there is 4th Avenue, which is Park Avenue, and it's above Union Square. Sorry, when I'm all jittery like this, it's because I actually can't see into the viewfinder. Okay, there's 4th Avenue. Below Union Square, it's called 4th Avenue, and above it's Park Avenue. I want to hear from you. This very good-looking, slightly elderly man, very professional, came up and talked to me, but he didn't want to be on camera. But I want to share with you what he told me. He said that his brother was arrested somewhere in upstate New York, near the border of Pennsylvania, but not Pennsylvania. I know Pennsylvania is supposed to have extremely strict rules. And what they finally decided was this case went up to the appeals level, and they determined that they sent in a private citizen, is what he said. And I was trying to find out what they meant by private citizen. But that's another topic. Somebody who is part of the corporation of the United States of America. He didn't know this argument. But he was saying that they took a regular person who went on the property and chatteled and then told a deputy who then somehow managed to get a warrant from the judge. But they determined at the appellate level that because they went in there with a regular person, it wasn't good enough. A deputy, I would imagine, would have to follow certain rules so that by the time he gets back to a judge, the judge is not signing a warrant based on hearsay. He was rather shocked, this gentleman that wouldn't go on camera, when I told him, in both cases with my husband and his son, they came in without a warrant. And in the second case, the warrant was signed 8 hours later by the judge. Now, you would think that the appeals court would really get on it. I also told him that the U.S. government, at least that's the corporation of Delaware, the United States of America, the District of Columbia, has a patent on cannabis. Cannabinoids is neuroprotectant. And somebody just sent me an email saying the fact that the U.S. government has a patent on the medicinal value means that there's a conflict in that all the marijuana decisions should be overturned. Now, this is really a tough one. If you're overturning all those decisions, you're going to have to make economic plans to incorporate all of these people that are in prison, because every day $350 is coming out of their accounts, and that's what these privately held courts are, privately held corporations with Dun & Bradstreet numbers. They're going after that $350 a day, which is accessed through the signature and the consent, although the consent is taken from the prisoner without his knowing, without his really understanding how his rights were converted into privileges, and that in return he agreed to follow certain rules. So if the U.S. government, the District of Columbia one, has a patent, and in those courts they're claiming that there's no medicinal value, then I think that's going to have to be changed. I mean, this man was rather shocked. He didn't want to buy any cards because he said there's nobody that he would send the cards to. That's how secret this all is. That's how closetish it all is. I mean, I talk about pot smokers who don't come out of the closet. What about people who are just growing just for the sake of profit? And they're not really participating in what this plant is all about, which is one that we feel from the Bible could be part of healing the nations. But this man was really, really shocked when he heard that Joe Barton and Jay Deberman had the police come in without a warrant both times, and the second time the warrant was actually signed after the fact, and you can see the contradiction in the application of the warrant versus the warrant itself. Their own evidence shows them that due process was severely abrogated. This man was shocked, but he didn't buy a card, he wouldn't come on camera. But God bless him, at least he talked to me about it, and that's the importance of this work. I really want to encourage people to come out and talk. Share a few thoughts on this show. Come with a mask if you want. Put a mustache on. Look at me. I'm courageous enough to come out at my age, be on camera in stark sunlight, and express my thoughts. I don't want to be considered a nut or a lunatic, and yet I think if we look at the way the economy is going, it's lunacy. It's lunacy to think that we're going to have a country that's going to be a wealthy country when we have 25% of the world's prisoners, the world's prison population. And you think of all these other really scary countries where good old boy networks throw people in jail to uphold their monopoly. You would think we would be better than that, and we could be better than that simply if we were informed. We just need not to be so ignorant. Let's get the word out. Let's get things changed. Let's really be a free people. Hey, you want to be on television?
I'm back!
Huh? He's going to go check and see if he gets permission to be on TV. What do New Yorkers think about marijuana? We know New Yorkers are consuming marijuana at a large rate, and for sure a lot of New Yorkers are being arrested illegally at a very alarming rate, and the police department doesn't like to talk about it because it's really kind of shameful that you take those kind of resources. It's supposed to be upholding law and order, and you actually overstep the line where you're terrorizing the citizens, telling people to empty their pockets when you have no right to ask them to empty their pockets. There's been no breach of the peace. There's been no harm that you can determine to anybody. It's just you're trying to pull in money for the industry. They've made an industry out of the judicial process. The judicial process has become a money-making process, and for sure that's got to be a conflict of interest. The whole point of due process is to protect the vulnerable, to hear their voice, to have their grievances addressed. Because if they're not included in society, and if they're locked up, it's human beings who you're not wealthy. Human beings who interact with the resources are what creates wealth. Otherwise, go out into vast expanses of space if you want to own millions of acres. Own millions of acres. It's not worth anything if there's not people on your millions of acres. You're going to want to come to a complex civilization where there is a distribution of labor so that people can do different things. Artists can create art and lift our thoughts to more sublime levels, our goals and our ideals. Without political activism and the ability to address grievances, it's pretty hard to keep government in check. People see an opportunity to use administrative powers as a money-making end in itself, giving out favors to special interests and so on. So if you don't have the ability to address grievances, you really don't have a free country. And that's why we feel it's really important to come out and to spread the cheer, because there is good news. A lot of things that we're fearful of, we don't need to be fearful of. This plant, if it's rendered into oil, can do amazing things. Regulation means more criminals. So who's going to regulate the regulators? That's why we always need belligerent claimants. People who will stand up and say, this is not right how I was treated. So the man who stopped and shared said that in the case of his brother, an informant came on the property. And then I shared this with the deputy, and then they came in with a warrant for this guy's case. But it was thrown out in the appeals court because they decided that a judge can't give a warrant based on hearsay, so it couldn't be just a common citizen, is what they said. I was curious if it was a citizen of the United States of America that corporation out of just Columbia. What are your thoughts? Even if you don't want to be on TV, it's good to come down and share them. So here I am exploring the new location, and the nicest young Chinese man who didn't know English very well helped me to move my bicycle. He was so sweet, but way too shy to be on camera. I don't think it was about the pot issue. I just think he was unsure of his communication skills. He didn't know English that well. But I was really appreciative to get the help to move all of this. But also it reminded me that I want people to understand what's going on in the economy so that there's no scapegoatism, that our mortgages are now owned by the Chinese, and that it's the Chinese that are turning us out of our homes, or that, the Chinese controlling our courts. We really need discovery, and we need disclosure. We need to open up these trusts so we know who's responsible. And so again, I want to say that